Welcome to the PinkpillRx podcast, hosted by Katie and Jay Fillmore, where we navigate complex and thought-provoking topics surrounding women with a focus on education. For shorter form content, follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube at Caters88 or PinkpillRx.
That's KATORS88.
If you enjoy this podcast, please give us a follow and maybe a nice review.
Welcome back to another episode. Let's jump on in. Jay and I were having a conversation last night because something popped up on like his screensaver on the desktop, and it looked like a very feminine part of a woman. It looked like it reminded me of a labia is what it reminded me of, but I couldn't come up with a word that like described it. You know, like when you see something that looks like a male member, you know, the word for that is phallic, right? That looks very phallic. Okay. But it dawned on me, there's like no female anatomy equivalent. And so we went down a rabbit hole about this because we were like, what do you call something that resembles the intimate feminine?
Yeah.
And Jay came up with the answer.
Yeah. I found it. So obviously we know phallic. They're actually from different languages.
Okay. So
phallic is what we all know. And then it's, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right or not. I'll say it and then I'll spell it. It's yonic, Y-O-N-I-C, which is relating to or resembling the vulva or womb, symbolically, femininity, receptivity, creation. And do you want to know where, I can give a little brief history on
the origins of the word. It's
origins of the word and why we don't use it. So first of all, I got to talk about phallic's origins and contrast, right? So phallic is from Greek, from phallus. And then yonic is not from Greek. It comes from yoni or yoni, Y-O-N-I, which is Sanskrit, which means womb, source, or origin. So phallic is Greek from phallos, because in ancient Greece, the phallus, I just keep thinking of The Office when there's a blooper where Steve Carell says phallus instead of Phyllis. And I just need to say it to get it out of my head. Or maybe it was scripted, not a blooper. Anyway, so in ancient Greece, the phallus was a public normalized, it was a symbol of fertility, ironically. Even stole that from you. Protection. People believed it could ward off evil, apparently. It's weird. We had an episode where we kind of talked about some weird stuff with that before.
Yeah.
Masculinity and vitality. It appeared in statues, festivals, and everyday objects. And then when modern Western psychology, especially Freud, needed a term, it pulled it from the Greek. Because Western academia is rooted in Greek and Latin vocabulary. You know, medical's all Latin and stuff. And Greek was already like the default language for scholarly terms. But then why is yonic from Sanskrit and not from Greek? Well, I'll tell you. So yonic comes from yoni, like I said, from ancient India, Sanskrit, and it's deeply embedded in Hindu symbolism, especially in like the union of linga, which is male, and yoni, which is female. So Indian traditions developed a paired symbolic system, with male being linga and female being yoni or yani. Western tradition didn't emphasize a parallel symbolic term for feminine, just the masculine.
So never transferred over.
No, so like you have this Eastern culture and language in India where it's like a yin and yang almost. You have the male and female, but then in ancient Greece, it's not just male. That's it. Didn't find the value in the feminine corresponding term in anatomy. So like when modern thinkers, like in feminism, comparative religions, Jungian psychology, needed a female term, and there wasn't one in the Greek to go with phallus or phallic, they borrowed it from Sanskrit because it didn't exist in the Greek.
But it got us thinking, okay, are there other words that there's not a feminine equivalent to in our everyday language?
Yeah, let's zoom out a little bit.
So I pulled up a couple of them. This is not going to be an exhaustive list, but I thought it was interesting. So emasculate.
Oh.
Okay, to strip a man of his power of masculinity or masculinity.
Yeah.
Right. There's no direct parallel that exists for women. stripping women of their power or femininity.
Yeah. Huh. Why do you think that is?
I don't know.
I have a theory.
You tell me.
Okay, so emasculating is often seen as a negative thing. Like you're using the word power as an example. Stripping a man of his power or title of power or vitality or whatever, because masculinity is such a systematically, quote unquote, valued thing. But if femininity is not culturally a valued thing, then there's no negativity with being stripped of it. So there's no word for that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, or maybe to emasculate is like masculinity is equivalent to like having power, and maybe they don't equate power, and so maybe that's where the crux is that you're being stripped of your power and the thing that makes you a man, and they don't view women as having that same innate power. So what is there really to strip?
Yeah, I like that's much better said.
Okay, next one is manhandle.
Oh.
There's not a woman handle equivalent. Eunuch.
That's a male term?
It's a castrated male.
Thank you. I never actually have known what that means.
Yeah, it has a lot of social and historical kind of history there.
Okay.
There's no equivalent single word for a woman whose reproductive organs were removed or who was forcibly sterilized.
Do you think it comes from the fact that you were mentioning this to me yesterday when we were talking about yoni and phallic, that testes.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. Yeah.
Because I think that could tie into why there's no word for it.
Yeah. So a fun fact is that the word testes has Latin roots that are connected to the word witness. So that's the original base. And from there, meaning split kind of in different directions. But the Latin testes means witness. And Latin tesculus means little witness. So the English translation of testicle literally means little witnesses. So it's like a witness or a testament to you being a man because they're visible. So it was like the testament or little witnesses to your male fertility or masculinity. And in some ancient cultures, men swore oaths while touching their genitals. And so the organs became symbolic witnesses to the truth of the statement.
That's interesting. I didn't know that one.
Ironically, though, the word vagina, the Latin root of that, the original meaning. Do you want to take a...
Oh, I know what it is.
Want to take a stab? What?
Isn't it like a sheath for a sword?
Sheath for a sword.
So it's still related to the dude.
Yep. There's also like no equivalent to like he has the balls to do it or like man up. Those kind of phrases.
Yeah.
There's not a female equivalent to that. Where there is female equivalent to words, though, I started realizing that they become less prestigious or develop a negative connotation over time. So this is actually something called semantic derogation. I think I'm saying that wrong. But, for example, bachelor versus spinster.
Oh, yeah. Bridgerton,
right?
Anybody?
So they're technically counterparts, okay? But spinster carries the negative, aging, social failure connotations that the bachelor doesn't.
Yeah.
Bachelor's more of like socially neutral or even positive when it's in reference to an unmarried man.
Yeah, it almost has like a party feel to it.
Yeah. And some of these might sound silly, but it is interesting. So like wizard and warlock, for example, refer to like male sorcerers.
Yeah.
Okay. They don't carry the same negative connotation as witch.
Man.
That's what became the default word for a woman who was like that.
That's interesting. Whoa. Okay.
Mistress versus master. So they were started as equals, but mistress drifted to mean a man's affair partner, losing its original prestige. It's used to refer to the female partner of an adulterer, but there's no male equivalent term that exists in common English for the opposite of that.
You're right. What was the original meaning for mistress then?
I think it meant the same thing as like master. It was like a way to like address somebody of stature.
Yeah.
But then it fell in grace.
I mean, that makes sense. You have miss Mrs., mistress.
Yes.
I mean, I guess that makes sense. Dang.
Another one would be like priest versus priestess. Mm-hmm. So like priest is a very respectable term, but priestess tends to have more of a negative connotation.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Meaning that like, oh, that's like off-brand. That's like woo-woo spiritual
Like a discount
stuff.
priest?
That's like, yes. And what's interesting is if you do have, like, let's say a religious equivalent that doesn't have a negative connotation to it, like priest and nun, for example.
Yeah, or monk and nun.
Yeah. But nun means, if you break it down, it means like grandmotherly wisdom and this grandmotherly spiritual wisdom. Mm-hmm. So it still is kind of like a little belittling in a way.
Yeah, yeah.
Old woman with wisdom.
Yeah.
And then you know how my brain works, right? I got the Weber,
Yeah.
the web face.
Yeah, you activated
in my
something.
brain. Yes. So I was thinking about, okay, so you got those words, right? Where you have the male meaning that typically is neutral or positive, and then the female meaning that's like negative a lot of times or not used as frequently because there's negative connotations and stuff. This is something you brought to my attention a while back ago. Something similar happens in the workplace with the feminization of professions. There's this well-documented phenomenon that happens. It's called occupational feminization. And it's the idea that the more a profession becomes feminized,
Oh, right.
the less that profession is valued.
Right.
And thus, the less you are compensated for it.
Right. Yeah, it happened. There's a lot of 20th century examples of it too.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it.
Sweet.
A 10% point increase in female share of an occupation leads to roughly an 8% decrease in average male wages and a 7% decrease in average female wages in the same period.
Whoa.
Over a 10-year period of time, that effect grows, and a 9% decline for men and a 14% decline for women in wages happens.
Jeez. Oh, wow.
So this affects everybody in the field, not just women.
Right.
So I want to specify this. The idea is that the profession itself becomes feminized. This does play into the wage gap in its own way.
Right.
But I'm not talking about like male versus female here. It's just talking about everybody in this profession, you're going to get paid less because it's a feminized profession.
Right.
Whether you're a man or whether you're a woman.
It's the opposite of all ships rising with the tide.
Right.
Right.
Right. All ships sink with this tide.
Yeah.
So the clearest historical example is teaching.
I was going to say.
It used to be a male-dominated field. And before the 17th century, these instructor roles were coveted. They served the children of wealthy families.
Like they use the word tutor
Yes.
more often?
Yes. And these men were paid well. Women were paid lower wages and were therefore much cheaper than men. Mm-hmm. So that was a strong factor when it came to publicly funded school systems. They wanted to save money. So they hired more women. As women took over the profession, its prestige and pay collapsed relative to other fields.
Whoa. For like this is well documented?
Yes, this is like the clearest historical example.
Wow.
So
Keep going. That's just wow. As a former teacher, that's very interesting to hear.
Well, in the 80s, 1980 to 81 school year, about 2 in 3 public school teachers were women. And by 2015 to the 2016 school year, that share had grown to more than 3 in 4.
Okay.
In the beginning, like when they started doing the public school system, part of the reason why they hired these women, I said they were cheaper. You want to know how much cheaper they were?
Sure.
They were often paid half the salary of a man.
Jeez. Ew.
That was in the 19th century. And administrators openly justified hiring women because they like spinned it as them being naturally suited. So because they were naturally suited to do that, it was easier for them so they could be paid less.
Yeah. And, I just really briefly asked ChatGPT about this and said, okay, well, why do they get paid more? And it's like, subject specialization, demand of those types of teachers, union salary structures, whatever. But what is interesting is that elementary school teachers are about 11% male, 89% female. High school is 36 to 40% male and 60 to 64% female. About 1 out of every 3 high school teachers is male versus 1 out of 9 for elementary.
And elementary gets paid
A lot less.
a lot less.
I mean, it says like 55 to 65% of new graduates for teaching are elementary, and 35 to 45% are middle and high school. But then also middle and high school, you need a bunch more teachers because they all teach their individual subjects. So it could be a supply and demand thing, but it is an interesting correlation. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that is interesting. Another profession where you get kind of a double whammy wage gap situation is in veterinary medicine. So in 1960, 98% of U.S. veterinarians were male. By 2023, approximately 67% were female. Research showed a general stagnation in veterinary wages relative to comparable professions like physicians, lawyers, optometrists, and pharmacists, so that those wages have stopped rising at the same rate.
Yeah.
Okay. And they showed a temporal association between that relative wage decline and fewer male applications to veterinarian school. As it stands right now, the median income of female veterinarians in private practice grew from $79,000 in 2007 to roughly $100,000 in 2021. Males, however, grew from the same time period. They were at $109,000 in 2007, and now they're at $132,000 in 2021. So the wages are starting to stagnate, but men are still leading significantly in that wage gap when it comes to veterinary medicine. Like, they make a lot more.
Like a male vet makes more than a female vet?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So 79 compared to 109,000.
Okay.
And then in 2021, 100,000 compared to 132,000.
Yeah.
Biology and medicine, similar trends have been noted in pharmacy, which is now dominated by women. And the trend might start to extend to human medicine as well, because female applicants to American medical schools surpass those of men. Another example of this is computer programming, but this is actually the opposite that happened.
Oh.
So in the 1940s through the 1960s, programming was considered clerical work. And many of those programmers were women because it was clerical work.
Got it.
Clerical work, I should say. And the pay and prestige were really modest. And in the 1970s and 1980s, more men started moving into the field. And it was rebranded at that point as technical and elite. And the pay started to skyrocket.
Interesting.
So we see the reverse pattern then. When men entered, pay rose. Women dominated earlier and they were paid less. A panel study across Britain, Germany, and Switzerland found that moving from an entirely male to an entirely female occupation entailed a loss in individual earnings of 13% in Britain, 7% in Switzerland, and 3% in Germany. So this isn't just a U.S. thing.
Yeah.
This is other places too. And researchers debate two main theories about why this is happening. One is devaluation. So the low social status of women rubs off on employers' evaluation of the occupation, and they set a lower pay level for both men and women than they would have if the identical work were done mostly by men.
Yeah.
The others are calling it queuing, which is low paying, less desirable jobs get left to women because men often find better alternatives.
Okay.
But there are some other things too that popped up in my research as far as like contributing factors, like slower promotion rates or negotiations maybe don't happen with pay in some of these professions as often. So like teachers, it's like a set rate, like, okay, this is,
salary schedule.
It's less negotiation. These are not commission-based fields. So you're not making higher bonuses and things like that.
Well, also the teaching jobs are funded by the government, not by a private most of the time, not like a private institution, unless it's like a religious school or something like that. So you have it's not like, oh, the industry's doing well, making lots of profits.
Yeah.
More money for raises, and people know that, and they want to petition for raises and stuff.
Yeah. Here are the early warning signs that economists look for to predict pay decline.
Okay.
Women exceed 60% of new graduates in that work field. Job flexibility increases. Standardized pay replaces negotiation. Prestige language shifts from technical work to more care work. And men begin leaving the field. So when they see these things happening, those are the tells.
Wages are going to stall.
Wages are going to stagnate or start to decline.
At least, I mean, that might just be even decline relative to inflation.
Yeah.
You might see the salary still going up.
Yes, and this happens usually when this starts. These things start to happen. You start to see these wages react within 10 to 20 years of these things happening.
So, are there any fields that are currently like undergoing this?
Yes, fields to be on the watch for that are having a feminized trend: data analytics, anything public health, occupational therapy, speech language pathology, nutrition and dietetics, environmental sciences, veterinarian technology, and education administration are in the early stages of these transitions, according to economists. Now, there's fields currently showing rising pay with a male concentration, more men entering the field.
Yeah, so the opposite situation.
The opposite.
What's going on with that?
Nurse anesthesiologists, skilled trades such as electricians, plumbers, HVAC, cybersecurity, data engineering, artificial intelligence, private equity and investing, logistics and supply chain management, advanced manufacturing, and commercial aviation pilots. However, in these male-dominated occupations, women are still paid less, 8 to 20% lower. They experience slower promotion rates, fewer high-revenue assignments. They tend to get penalized more for negotiating. There's a negotiation bias that it's not as appropriate for women to negotiate. Like female physicians, for example, earn about 8 to 12% less than their male counterparts. And that's after adjusting for specialty hours and experience.
That's weird.
And there is a pattern of that across the male-dominated fields, like I said. So engineering, the pay gap's about 10 to 15%. Finance, 20 to 30% if you include bonuses. Medicine is about 8 to 12%. Law is 15 to 25% at senior levels. And skilled trades are 12 to 18%. Technology is 8 to 12%. These are the averages after controlling for major factors like education and hours worked. But like I said, it's rarely caused by a single factor. A lot of times it's a stack of like small things. So like promotion timing, specialty choice, overtime access, leadership opportunities, negotiation dynamics.
Yeah, sure.
Career interruptions because women have children.
Yep. Yeah, some of these things are things that I haven't heard of or heard discussed before regarding gender pay gap, like the negotiation bias. Mm-hmm. Access to overtime. That's interesting.
Yeah.
If you're for hourly workers.
Yeah.
Bonuses is interesting too. Because what if your base salary is pretty similar, but once you add in bonuses, there's a much larger disparity.
To complicate this even more, there is something that's going to affect July 2026. It was proposed by the U.S. Department of Education, and they are changing rules.
When was this proposed? What year?
This was last year. This is yes, and it's supposed to go into effect.
What?
Where they are changing certain degrees.
Oh, right.
From the professional degree classification and reclassifying it as a non-professional degree, which slashes federal student loan access, and it will hinder advancement. And a lot of these are female saturated fields that they are now saying that is not a professional degree. So guess what? Now you only have access to X amount of money. You max out for your student loans. Yeah.
What fields? People need to know. That's crazy. Gosh, I cannot stand this administration.
So these are the ones drawing the most backlash. This is not like an exhaustive list, but nurse practitioners.
What?
Yeah, they're not going to be professional degrees now.
What about physician's assistant?
Yep, that's on there too. Physician assistant.
Unbelievable, dude.
CRNA is on there. That's a big one. And that is becoming more male saturated. It's not male dominated, but it is male saturated.
What is a CRNA?
That's the, I'm sorry, that is the nurse anesthesiologist.
Okay.
Their pay is increasing, like I was saying, because more men are entering the field. But you're going to be able to borrow less now because, yes. So you got CRNA, clinical nurse specialist, midwives, occupational therapy, speech language pathology.
You have to have a doctorate for some of these.
I know, audiology, public health, social work, counseling and therapy degrees.
We need all the counselors and therapists we can get.
There are, though, some other ones that are STEM and technical fields that were also excluded. Engineering.
What?
Architecture, data science, computer science, accounting, MBAs, finance, analytics.
So what are considered, after July, what will be considered professional degree? Like a law degree?
Mm-hmm. Yep,
an
a
MD,
law degree.
MD or a DO?
Mm-hmm.
What else? Anything else? Teachers?
No, teachers are not considered a professional degree.
What? I guess I didn't really know this was a technical specification for degrees.
So these are still classified as professional, meaning that you can borrow up to $200,000.
Okay.
Non-professional graduate programs have lower borrowing limits, depending on the program, up to $100,000. But I have found some conflict with sources of that because I've seen that it could be capped at $20,500 in federal loans annually.
Yeah.
So anyways, medicine, MD, DO, dentistry, pharmacy, veterinarian medicine, law, optometry, podiatry, chiropractic, theology, clinical psychology, and osteopathic medicine.
These are all considered which one?
Professional.
Theology, really?
Yep. Not a master of arts, but a master of divinity.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. So apparently, I didn't know this. If it's not a professional degree, then there are other classifications of degree that kind of like overlap in different times. Mm-hmm. So there's professional, okay, which is the goal is to practice a specific profession, which makes no sense to me why some of these are not going to be considered professional. Then there's academic degrees, which focus on theory, research, like a doctor of philosophy, master of science in something, versus like a Juris Doctor or doctor of medicine, master of divinity, like you said. Then you have vocational degrees or technical degrees, right? And then you have applied degrees, which is a practical use of knowledge. So it's less theory than an academic degree, but it's not considered a professional degree. Research degrees, like a PhD or a THD, which is about producing new knowledge. Terminal degrees. But like professional degree, you're progressing for licensure in a particular profession.
Yeah.
I don't get why they're getting rid of accountant, physical therapist, nurse practitioner.
Nurse practitioner, come on, you're prescribing medications to people. You are operating at a high level.
Yeah.
Most of these excluded fields share at least one of these traits. It's either female-dominated workforce, care-based professions, education-based professions, or public sector employment.
It's to reduce unsustainable borrowing, aimed to cap student loan debt. The department explicitly stated the classification is not a judgment about whether a field is a profession. It only determines loan eligibility. It's all financial.
Yeah, no, I know, but that is...
But these jobs are ridiculously important to have people that can be qualified in them.
Yes, and there's already a shortage, especially in nursing world. So nursing schools already turn away over 65,000 applicants yearly due to faculty shortages. Limiting funding for advanced degrees reduces the pipeline of new nurse educators.
We got so many problems. We've got so many problems. Because then you should be incentivizing these jobs that we need. Like you should be incentivizing people to become instructors in nursing programs because we need more nurses. So why isn't that happening?
Yep.
Instead, you're just taking away student loan access for people, and those fields are adjacent fields.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess this is the student loan reformation, huh?
Yeah, this is our solution, not making college more affordable.
No.
We're just going to take away the money you can borrow for it. You got to pick something else.
Yeah, so that will affect
Jeez.
a lot of people
yeah.
come July 2026, unfortunately.
Is this for graduate school student loans or undergraduate as well?
Well, those are graduate programs.
So like if you have if your undergraduate degree is accounting.
I still think that you can still borrow
the same amount,
like the undergraduate limits.
Yeah, just the graduate limits are now.
I believe so.
I think you're right because I was just reading about graduate plus loans.
Yeah, because it eliminates those from being accessible to people who are in professional
Yeah,
degree
it won't.
seeking.
That you can't pay for your whole degree with that anymore.
Correct. Which, I mean, to some level, I understand. Listen, it would be very unwise to take out $100,000, $200,000 worth of student loans, and you're a social worker.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's not because social work isn't important. Social work is saturated in women. They do not get paid very much money.
Yeah, the salary's too low to repay. It's probably the government's rationale, I would think.
Yes. Instead of looking into the importance of these fields and maybe raising pay, we're just going to reduce accessibility, further the deficit of these professionals as far as access goes to the community, because less people are going to be choosing to do it.
Yeah, because you're being forced to choose that because you can't afford it.
So, in theory, for example, your sister, who's a physical therapist, would not have. I mean, I happen to know. I'm not going to advertise it, but I happen to know the student loan amount that she had to take out. She would not have been able to be a physical therapist
because she couldn't afford the program.
She would not have been able to afford the program.
Jeez.
Because her student loans exceed the minimum borrower amount.
The maximum borrower amount?
The maximum borrower amount. Yes, thank you. The maximum borrower amount come July 2026. Wow. And she does pretty well for herself.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like she can't pay those bills.
Yeah,
you know?
and she'd be making even more if she was like, up north 30 minutes.
Yeah. So
you could pay back even more easily.
Yeah.
Jeez, dude.
So that's just an example of just someone in my life that I know off the top of my head that would not have been able to do that profession under these new regulations.
I wonder how many of these professions qualify for like the public service forgiveness.
Oh, a lot of them do.
So I wonder if they're trying to cut back on the government forgiving all these student loans.
Oh, I wonder if there is a connection there, because I know that the physical therapist, there's for sure.
Yeah, 10 years.
Yeah,
qualifying
10 years working at a non-for-profit.
Yeah, I wonder how many of these other ones qualify for that type of federal loan forgiveness. And they're like, too expensive, not going to keep forgiving all these loans. So we're going to eliminate how much they can take out in loans. So that way, what we do end up forgiving is much less.
Yeah,
it doesn't make it. That doesn't make it fine. It's just I'm curious I wonder if that's a part of the equation there. I wonder.
Well, that's all I have for us today.
It was fascinating, all around.
Yeah,
Now I do. I hope for those of you listening, something was intriguing or sparked a curiosity, or you felt affirmed or challenged. Stay educated. Take the pink pill. If you enjoyed this podcast, please give us a follow and maybe a nice review.